All right, we will adjourn once, we'll not adjourn, actually restart again. Thank you everyone for transitioning over to this room. We had to make accommodations for the Charter Commission. Again, just to repeat, this 3 minutes on the clock per speaker. If you have lengthy testimony, we will receive it, we'll read it, process it, but feel free to kind of summarize your main points when you testify, in the interest of time, so everyone can have a chance to speak. All right, so the next, next panel is Ellen McHugh, Nancy Northrup, Susan Croson, Rebecca Kostchenko, Jackie, Celia Katz, and Celia Green. All right, so whoever is ready to go first, may go first.
Please just state your name at the beginning.
Would you like to go first?
I think you probably know me because my mom's done a lot of work here. But just in case you don't, my name is Jacqueline Kostchenko. I'm in 8th grade. I go to school in Brooklyn at the middle school MS 447. I want to start off by saying that being a kid with a disability in New York City public schools is so difficult in so many ways that a lot of times it's almost even hard to describe with words. Having a disability in school makes you feel like the teacher, not the student, a lot of times. School is already challenging between studying for tests and or doing your homework on time, but when you add on top of that, having to change every single activity, homework, and class trip that comes in your path as a student, it's much, much harder. I would like everyone to think back to when they were 13 or 14 years old. Most people, when they're teenagers, don't want to speak up, sometimes don't even want to speak at all. So I'm sure you all can imagine being 13 and having to tell your teachers on a daily basis, no, that activity doesn't work for me, or sorry to make you change your entire lesson plan, but I can't physically do that. Just a few weeks ago, right around the time I told my group I'd be willing to come down here today and speak, I had an experience that I've had many times before. My math teacher and my advisory teacher there are the same person. In math, I noticed that we had been walking around the room in the hallway a great deal, so I decided to go after school and talk to the math teacher about how this physically doesn't work for me. In response to that, she said, "But it worked for you before." After some more explaining, she said that she understood, and that was that. A week later, I got an email the night before the day that we have advisory, and telling me about a physical activity coming up. The activity was moving around the room to different tables based on a certain number you got. I responded saying, "We already discussed this and it does not work for me." Luckily, the lesson plan was changed. But why do I have to keep telling this teacher? Why do I have to keep teaching all my teachers how to include a student with physical disability? From this experience and other experiences, I've learned that teachers aren't trained at all in how to deal with students with physical disabilities. What I did notice is that teachers are trained in dealing with students with behavioral issues, intellectual disabilities. Recently, we had LGBTQ+ week in schools where there was a whole seminar for teachers on how to be there for LGBTQ+ students, and we had Black Lives Matter week just recently. I'm so grateful for all this, but why do we not have any teacher training for students with physical disabilities? Don't I deserve to be understood and supported as well? Thank you.
You left me speechless. Very powerful stuff, and I could not agree more. First of all, thank you for your courage. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing that. And as a former teacher, you are correct. We have a lot more work to do for better teacher training, and they can't just send us on a workshop. They should prepare us before we get into the classroom how to meet the needs of all of our children. So thank you and thank your wonderful mom and your family. Your advocacy and your story really inspired this council and this body, which was the impetus behind the significant money that we put in to make our schools more accessible. But there's still so much more work to do. But thank you so much, and that was an A+.
Thank you.
Great job. Yes, great. Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Celia Green. I'm a mom of 6 young men, 4 of whom are on the spectrum, 3 of whom are still public school students, and all 3 of whom are still D75 students. I have been a mom with experience in D75 since 1994, and as the saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I can definitely know that the same things that were happening to me and parents back in the 90s are still happening to parents today. That's definitely not a good thing, because I believe that anytime you find something in a particular way, you should leave it better than you found it. I am also the co-chair of CPAC, the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council, and I'm also the president of CCHS, which is the Citywide Council on High Schools. I wanted to touch a couple of points that may not have been touched with D75 and D79, because I've noticed that no one has brought up D79. A lot of our kids do grow up and do end up in D79 programs as well. So there is a large amount of children with IEPs in those programs also. I think part of the difficulty that a lot of people are seeing within the DOE is that there is so many silos, there's too many silos. No one knows what the other person is doing. There are really good CSEs, so if you live in District 1 or District 2, you may not have had as hard an issue. If you live in District 13 or 15 in Brooklyn, you may not have had the same issue as if you lived in, let's say, District 19. I don't think that whether or not you get educated should depend on the district you live in. In my case, it did, because I live in District 18, and it was not a good CSE. It remains not a good CSE. All of my children have been lucky enough to be educated or housed in District 13 and 15. So they are getting things that they need. They are getting the supports they need. But it should not be a hit and miss across the city. They're all children. We all need all of our children to function independently. If you want to have taxpayers, you have to have people that function independently. So all our children deserve that chance. I think that it is taken from our children too often because one hand doesn't know what the other one is doing. District 75, I want to point out, is a district who has a superintendent but does not have a CSE, which is a shame because determinations as to kids that really don't need to be in 75 could be made at that CSE, and kids that really do need it should be able to get those services. One other thing I want to mention too, I noticed that people are mentioning all these different services, you know, speech OT and other related services, but one of the ones they did not touch was assistive technology evaluations. And assistive technology, it helps a lot of children, but every time and across schools, if you mention the fact that you want an assistive technology evaluation, they all act like you've asked for the Holy Grail and for them to go and get it. It takes several tries. It takes you trying to get someone else to advocate on your behalf. It takes writing to the chancellor and this person and that person just to get the one thing that you need for your kid to thrive. When kids get what they need, they truly thrive. When they don't, there's a great chance of failure. Yep.
Hi, my name is Nancy Northrup, and I served for 3 years as chair of the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council and for 5 years as president of the Queens High School President's Council. So in both cases representing a lot of Ps and PTAs and parents throughout the system. And there's probably never been one more single topic that has come up in more of our discussions and our meetings than the provision of special ed services and IEPs. My passion is high school, so I'm going to focus on high schools. Provisions of services and respective IEPs at the high school level are very hit and miss. Some schools do a great job, but a lot of them miss the mark. I need to give a shout out to the DOE. On one front, we at CPAC and at the High School President's Council level requested a special ed task force dealing with high school issues with the DOE, and we've been working with them for about a year. But I did want to give you a sampling of some of the topics that we've been talking about, because I do think high school is a bit of a separate issue. One, in many high schools, IEPs are routinely ignored and are only partially implemented. While the City Council's desire for the DOE to provide school-level data on compliance rates for the students' IEP is a laudable goal, it's a bit like asking the fox to count the chickens in the chicken coop. Of course, schools are going to state that IEPs are being implemented, whether it is true or not, and this is a huge problem. What does it mean for a school to be in compliance given that IEPs are multi-layered documents with various accommodations, services and supports, goals, and the need for teachers to modify their methods to support each child? Two, students often do not receive, and we've talked about this all day, the services outlined in their IEPs. I just want to stress that even though the DOE may say something else, it really is a huge part of it is lack of funding. They'll always say, oh, funding is not the issue, and that's just incorrect. There's also a problem, obviously, of lack of trained personnel. But parents find it nearly impossible to obtain these services from outside providers, especially at the high school level. The impact for high school students can be devastating and last a lifetime. Students may not complete high school or make it to college because they are not receiving the supports they need. Three, general education high school teachers often do not understand their role and responsibility in carrying out an IEP or teaching to special needs students. They are not required to take the training they need to support these students. High school general education teachers are are key to the implementation of IEPs, but many view implementation as a responsibility of the special ed teacher. Many are unaware that state guidelines require that they adjust their teaching in the classroom to support these students. And because IEPs are extremely difficult to read, high school teachers often cannot spot what supports and accommodations they are required to provide. There is also a pervasive, implicit bias among many teachers and administrators that students with IEPs are either lazy, stupid, or an added burden in the classroom, which can have devastating psychological impacts on these very vulnerable children. And just my last thing, 4, the role of special education teachers at the high school level is particularly problematic, especially in subject areas they do not understand. The DOE needs to do a deep dive to determine what it means to provide sets to high school students with IEPs taking higher level courses. In many cases, this time is currently used to do homework, time for special education students to tutor other students, or time to play Scrabble and listen to music. Anyway, I believe the creation of a special ed czar is a fabulous idea. Please do it, but please make sure they also focus on high school issues, because the DOE just totally forgets that high schools exist. Thank you.
Thank you, and I am a former gen ed high school teacher, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and I taught an inclusion class with a special education teacher. We had to make our own time to meet, to plan, to modify our instruction to meet the needs of our kids. They did not give us that time in the beginning until we had to push system-wide changes within our school to give us common planning time. Here they were, they put 2 teachers in a classroom, and I treat the kids, they're all my kids, regardless of what roster they might be on. They're all of our children. And we needed to make time as teachers to meet together, to collaborate, to plan together. I cannot agree with you more about the more work we have to do at the high school level as well. So I really appreciate your...
I just want to stress one thing, not every kid with an IEP is part of an ICT class. There are
Correct.
lots and lots and lots of kids with IEPs who are just in general ed classrooms doing their thing.
Correct. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Susan Croson. I'm the mom of 2 amazing boys that are now 18 and 19 years old. I'd like to say that even though the Education Committee members have changed, I'd like to think that I'm not a stranger to the committee. I want to thank you for having this. It's been a long time coming, but my heart is full. So thank you very much for listening. Please excuse me, I just spent 12 hours driving my son back to his school in Massachusetts, so I'm a little exhausted. I'm piggybacking on, there are a couple of issues I have. I have a general ed kid, well, he just graduated, and a son that was privately placed. Private school placement, funding, and care of those children who are privately placed need a voice. They need support, they need information. Imagine finding out the first time at your 19-year-old's IEP meeting that they haven't taken Regents, then they won't get a diploma. In the year following, do you think they've offered any support, suggestions, or avenues to have a path for that child? No. There's no area in the Department of Special Education to deal with private students. It's probably one thing if a child is placed in the city area, but you know, my son is in Massachusetts. They have different laws, they have different rules, and I don't get to see him a lot, and it's awful. Then this is all in my testimony, and just talk to Jan, she knows the whole story. But here's another piece. Special education for high schools within general education population and setting. It's not a surprise that many middle schools push to have their kids declassified prior to high school, because the high schools don't have the funds, tools, teachers to cover the special ed needs. Most of the kids in my younger son's school had sets. When their sets provider left in the beginning of my son's 10th grade, they had no one to replace him. He went through 10th and 11th grade without appropriate set services. 12th grade sets ended up being a study hall. I'm not sure what a study hall does to help kids with ADHD, organization issues, executive functioning issues. Needless to say, these kids didn't fare well with college options. And the real tragic thing is most of the parents whose kids didn't get their sets had no idea, and still don't, that their kids didn't receive their services. Study hall is not sets. Why is this happening? I don't think there are a lot of high school special education teachers. Whatever teachers that are in the system seem to be leaving. I'm not sure why, but first and foremost, the DOE needs to hire more special ed teachers or do what I suggested and bring in tutoring programs that can help with skill building on this kind of level. And Nancy mentioned the group, which has been wonderful and very helpful. Sorry. I'm just going to stop there. You've heard it. It's, ditto, ditto, ditto.
No,
not getting services.
But your points
ditto.
are well taken, and I'll tell you, my license area was in history education for high school. I would have appreciated additional training education courses on special education during my training years. I felt there was too much content, not enough pedagogy, not enough skills, skill building for all children. So I think your testimony is spot on in an area that needs, but we need the state actually to make some changes and requirements for teacher licensing. So I really, really do appreciate for your leadership. Thank you so much. And next, sure.
Hello, honorable members of the New York City Council Education Committee. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this important conversation about early intervention and preschool education services. My name is Celia Katz, and I'm a 17-year-old high school student. I would not be who I am today had it not been for the early intervention and preschool special education services I received. I was born 2 months early and had a stroke in utero which affected the left side of my body. I was diagnosed with apraxia, dyspraxia, speech, language, and motor delays, motor skill planning issues, hypotonia, low muscle tone, auditory processing, a seizure disorder, and very severe sensory issues. From the stroke, I did not have the natural developmental milestones and instincts of most toddlers. I had to be taught how to roll over, crawl, walk, eat, and speak. I did not walk or talk until I was almost 2 years old. I had physical therapy, fine motor occupational therapy, gross motor occupational therapy, speech therapy, and oral motor speech therapy basically every day until I was 5 years old, and I needed an attendant with me in preschool. While I qualified immediately for early intervention services, there were not enough caseworkers and therapists available to begin my treatment right away. With language and auditory processing delays, you are in a race against time, as the odds for remediation and being on track for school are better if you begin before you're 3 years old. Thankfully, my family had the ability to navigate the system and the means to supplement early intervention services with private therapies, but it was at a significant expense that is not an option for everyone. There was no daycare that could accommodate the magnitude of care and therapies I needed, and full-time care was also a great expense. At one point, my mother had to leave her job to care for me. The impact of early intervention and preschool special education services go further than just physical development. I learned at a very young age that many things that come easier to other children would be extremely difficult for me to accomplish, but with the right support and extreme determination, anything is possible. In essence, that mentality, the awareness that it will be challenging but that I can do it, is the reason I'm able to succeed today. Without the support I received, I would have never learned how to exert myself. I would not have been able to see past my disabilities. I'm here because I believe it is important that every child receives the right support and care so that they too can recognize their abilities and potential and apply this mentality to every obstacle for the rest of their lives. Today, I'm an honors student and have played varsity basketball and will be applying to college next year. I know that I would have not gotten this far without early intervention and preschool special education services. I think every child should have access to these services and given an equal chance not only to survive, but to succeed. I am concerned that there are not enough early intervention and preschool special education therapists to meet the demand of kids and families who need them, just as there were 17 years ago when I was born. I hope the City Council will help to make sure all children get the services they need as early in life as possible. Thank you.
So I just want to, first of all, A+ as well.
Thanks.
That was outstanding. Round of applause for our young people. They are. Quick question to both. Any careers you're considering of in the future already, or still undecided? No pressure.
I'm feeling a little bit of pressure. I have no idea.
I will say, if I can make a potential suggestion for both of you, if running for office isn't a bad thing. Yes.
Something where I get to speak my mind and stand up for things that don't seem right to me, because there are so many things that just are so messed up in this world that I want to be able to fix.
Well, this is a much simpler answer than that, but I mean, I have two very parallel career choices. I am really into fashion, so I was thinking fashion journalism or maybe being something for Vogue, like a Vogue editor. Also, anesthesiology, being an anesthesiologist.
That is extraordinary. They're
really different.
Just saying, every 4 years, election for president, every 4 years, election for city council coming up. This is all about you and your future, and I just cannot thank you enough for your courage and for your stories, because what you're affecting here is not just your own cases, but for all of our children. And so I can't thank you enough. And also, just quick.
So you talked about how some schools are model programs, which makes a difference between a child graduating and not. So on your work on the Parents Advisory Council, was there any efforts ever by DOE to identify those model programs and then share those throughout the system on a school level to say, these schools are making a difference because of X, Y, and Z?
I think that's definitely one of our recommendations that we're working towards, is trying to create more of those and to use those as centers where teachers can come and learn more and just become better programs. But I just think there's so much work that needs to be done at the high school level. It's just can't even scary.
Thank you all very much. Outstanding panel. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Did you?
My daughter's putting me on the spot. Yes. Yeah, but I can go on the next panel.
Okay. All right. Yes. So I'm going to call the next panel in. I'm going to take a brief, just 1 minute pause, just to There is a little bit of positive breaking news today in terms of the Board of Elections, something else happening all today. We've been fighting very hard in the council to provide interpreters at poll sites to help our communities get information, and we won the lawsuit here today. So I'm just going to be quickly briefed in 1 minute, and I'll come right back. But I want to call the panel in. So this is a tremendous day here today. I want to call up next Melissa Katz, Matthew Del Forte, Cameron Brown, Karen Tumulty, Dr. Beth Raskin, and Ray Eisdorfer.
So Cameron is not here. He spoke before, and Ray left.
Was Ray called?
Sorry?
Was Ray called up? On this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, she was, but she's not here. So
Okay. Wherever you like. Would you like to?
how are you? You're the proud mom. That's what you are. Proud mom. It's beautiful.
Right here.
I have 3 kids, and when they do those things,
You mean the Charter Center? I'm sorry, who are you? That's Matt. I do a tremendous amount of work on behalf of the Charter Movement.
I said I have a 17-year-old.
Counsel to many schools.
Listen, she's a great kid.
Nice to meet you.
But she's a great kid.
Tell James I say hello.
It's your EMT, and I just can't believe it all happened, you know? Can't pick up a towel at home, but like, they're good people. They're good people.
How long you been at the center?
I don't know. When they leave, if they ever leave, I don't know. Yeah. But then you don't have to look at it.
Good work.
I try not to look at the pictures. Never I
Mention
dwell
it.
for
We may have
anybody.
crossed on emails. On the ELL issue. One of my clients is the Renaissance Charter School. Stacy Gaspar.
I'm like,
Yeah, Stacy
I
and
didn't
I
eat
were
lunch before this, is all I can say.
we're
We
going down
ran
to
out. This is
DOE,
like
advocating for
exhausting.
things.
We should have taken one of those sandwiches.
And we used to say strength in numbers. So we
I have a
round
meeting
up
at my
the
kid's
other
school
groups
tonight too.
to go pound the table.
I don't think I'll make it
Come a long
actually,
way.
so.
You know, James
Yeah,
may know
but,
this. James
I'm the
knows me
principal
well.
of my Hope International Academy.
I do a tremendous amount of work in the special ed world too. I've spoken at the Bar Association on
Mics are hot.
Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Again, we just remind everyone there's 3 panels left, so we're going to be on the clock. And we have all the written testimony, so we're just looking for the salient high points, please.
Guess we'll start.
I'm going to have to cut out after this and take my 8th grader home. I apologize. My daughter, summa cum laude, good kid, very proud. I feel like, excuse me? Oh, Rebecca Kostuchenko, mother of Jacqueline, 8th grader, Brooklyn, member of Arise Coalition, lover of Include NYC. I feel like I had a lot written, but everybody touches on everything that's so important here, and we could sit for days and days, and every parent here has stories, and I know you've heard a lot of mine. But I'm gonna talk about what I haven't been able to change for my daughter, that only the system can change. And that's the bias, the implicit bias, the ignorance, and ableism that pervades the system. And I think all the things that you hear, all these stories have that as a common root. It's a societal problem, and it reflects itself in our educational community. But, you know, importantly, like, I don't like the term special education, because that places some education as other and some education as typical. And disabilities of all types are typical. They are part of human existence. They're part of who we are as human beings. And the problem is that we have seen them not in that way, when actually that's what they are. And that's what, you know, I've been really lucky, because I have a lot of privilege in a lot of ways, that I've been able to buy my daughter out a lot of the situations that you hear about, that we've been in. And I've been able to pay for therapists when I didn't get my RSAs to go through for 4 months. And I've been able to pull her and put her in a private school when we've had trouble having an accessible public school. But I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. And, you know, I believe that our city deserves better. I know that you know that. And I believe that all kids deserve better. So essentially, what I'm here to make a voice for is for integration, because the only way to change that bias, the only way to change the ignorance and ableism, is to make sure that our kids are all together, and they're all taught together, and their needs are all seen as equal, the same, and all as valuable, and all to be met. And I've found, as the parent of a child in general education who has an IEP, who has very specific needs, that the silos in this city between special education and general education have created an entire separate system of other. And when you're in general ed with an IEP, especially when you're not something more common like ADHD, for example, but even that, you'll see that our system doesn't see that as part of normal, that you're not going to be included. And those teachers don't know what to do, as you heard my daughter speak. I mean, she doesn't even, on field trips, if she wants to take a bus with her class on a field trip, our city doesn't have inclusive, accessible buses for a field trip. So when she goes on a field trip, if she wanted to be on an accessible bus, which of course she does because she needs one, she would have to go separately on a bus by herself on a field trip. We don't have an accessible bus for a field trip for her. That is such a minimal level of inclusion. She sits outside at separate entrances. She has not had access to her stage. She has not had access to her music room. She has had paras who are not trained to deal with students with physical disabilities and are upset at the idea that they're there to assist somebody physically and not actually to be in charge of them intellectually or emotionally, who have treated her poorly. She's had teachers who don't understand chronic illness and absences and, your choice, if you're somebody who has a lot of physical issues that require doctors or hospitals, is to either be taught at home, a very minimal number of hours, or to just try and keep your head above water and work really, really, really hard and be the peg that they want you to fit into their hole. And that's what she has to do. We have teachers say, well, it's not fair, even though you've been out for a week in the hospital, if I give you an extension on that paper. Like basic levels of inclusion that aren't okay. I could go on and on for days, but I just want to say that the teachers, the staff, and the administration in our schools, some of them, I can't paint them all with the same brush. Clearly, you are a teacher, and look at you, what you're doing here. But for a large part, and especially in our general education system, they don't get it, and they are a reflection of our society, and we need to start attacking that with specific sensitivity and anti-bias training for those people. And once we get to the root of the problem, we're going to start to see some of the other things clear up. Because if we think that all kids are equal, including kids with disabilities, then we're not going to have 4-month waits for RSAs, and we're not going to have no accessible buses for field trips, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your powerful testimony. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Tumulty. I'm the school principal for the International Academy of Hope. We are a small school that services students from 5 to 21 who have a diagnosis of traumatic brain injury or otherwise acquired brain injury. Our students that we support are the most vulnerable students of New York City. They are students that come to school ready to learn, but they also are students who come to school on ventilators, with G-tubes, need of oxygen, personal care, medication, rescue medication. And so these students that have already gone through the D75 process, where New York City has said they are not the appropriate candidate, they have already been given a non-public school, but there is no state-approved school accessible to them in terms of proximity to their home. They come to us, and still we are really struggling with this reimbursement process. The families, even families who are willing or would definitely consider other alternatives, they've already been turned down, and now they're at the place where they cannot get reimbursement. How that affects a school program such as ours is clearly we have a tremendous cash flow issue, and when there's a cash flow issue, we have to find someone to, a line of credit in a different fashion. What that does also is create an instability towards the staff. And so staff, when you want to retain the most highly qualified staff that we need for students who have a high level of support need, don't feel like we necessarily are offering them that sustainable place of employment. So that also puts the students at risk, because you need really qualified staff. The other issue is just to mention is that, for example, New York City, which on their IEPs, they have nursing services, they have skilled nursing services. That contract is through Horizon, that the New York City Board of Ed has that contract. We are unable to get funding for that. Presently, that's $90,000. And Horizon is saying if you don't provide payment, we won't provide the service. So these kids are in the middle of this tug of war. So either we're paying it, but again, that puts us in addition to their tuition way behind the 8 ball, or the student doesn't get the care that they need. And obviously, we are student first. Children should have their care needs met first, their educational, what they're entitled to, available to them, and the stress level of their parents reduced. So we are all in favor of streamlining this process, of making it more transparent, of when those payments eventually come in, that the DOE somehow has a better recording mechanism for it, because they will frequently send a check which is unidentifiable as to who it's connected to, which I find it hard to believe that any entity could write large checks without an identifying marker as to what it's earmarked for. Again, we're all spending a lot of extra money and time unnecessarily. We can make it a better process. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up to that. So you mentioned that some of these service providers are threatening to withhold services because of non-payment for quite some time.
Correct.
And you have flagged this with the DOE? Have you informed the DOE of these threats from service providers?
Well, the Horizon Healthcare,
Right.
which is a DOE contract, is saying that they have not received payment, that they're going to withhold the service. And the payment is attached to the reimbursement, which could be, as you know, a year or 2 years, or so, where the nursing is in the middle of this triangle. So we're fronting nursing on top of that educational service.
So I'm just trying to figure out who from the DOE was made aware of this, and what are they doing to address it? Any office that
So it winds up to be included in the settlement, would be the intent, but it's already on their IEP that the DOE has drafted, and it says skilled nursing on their IEP. So it should be that at least the nursing aspect is fast-tracked. That would be our request, because it is designated on their IEP as a skilled nursing.
There's a troubling pattern that I'm hearing today, all day today, just about a clear lack of accountability. A lack of urgency, but a clear lack of accountability. This is just really unacceptable, and I thank you for your powerful testimony. And
thank you so much.
The committee staff was taking notes about your situation as well, so thank you very much. Please.
I'm Dr. Beth Raskin, the Executive Director of Kulanu Academy, a private school that serves New York City students with disabilities. We're chartered by the New York State Board of Regents. We serve elementary through the age of 21. You have heard impassioned stories from parents. You have heard from some of our attorneys. I think the piece that I'd like to share that's most critical to us echoes my colleague, and that is the dreadful DOE impartial hearing settlement and payment service system, the impact that it has on schools, and really to ask for your help. The system is broken. Respectfully, I disagree with the DOE. It is not all roses at all. In several meetings with DOE's general counsel, we were told that the DOE is overwhelmed. They didn't have enough staff. There were delays at the controller's office. Frankly, at one of the meetings, counsel alluded to the fact that we were causing the problem because we had so many more cases that we were now bringing forth. Without transparency, frankly, we can't figure out where any of our cases are. I want to give you hard data. 2017-18, last year we had 50 New York City cases. 60% of them remain unpaid. 14 cases are settled in the system and represent to us $1.7 million. We have not been paid. 18 families filed impartial hearings because the DOE never responded to the 10-day notice. And so those additional 18 families, those cases are $1.5 million. We are out $3.5 million from 17-18. How are we supposed to run our business? I increased my line of credit. I have donors that I've asked to support us. I have trouble making payroll every 2 weeks. We are in debt for $2 million. 2018 is no better. As a matter of fact, in 2018, half of our student body hasn't even had a response to their 10-day notice. That means 25 cases haven't even begun yet. And for all intents and purposes, it's March. When will we see resolution to those cases? Not for at least another year. How are we supposed to survive? The result of this is my colleagues and I have a new norm, and that new normal is cash flow crisis. Our programs, we run them. We support all of our families and all of our students. We are in jeopardy right now. So the oversight that you're suggesting, the 1380 that Councilwoman Rosenthal's put forth, we are so supportive of that. Whatever we can do on behalf of our families, our staff, we're there to help you along the way. Thank you.
I thank you so much, and I'm going to ask the same question. Who from the DOE or anyone from the DOE have you been communicating with, flagging these? This is serious stuff.
I will tell you that we have spoken to the general counsel who oversees the reimbursement process, who says, well, here's our problem. We don't have enough staff. And I said, but that's your problem. I run a business. It's an education business. If I don't have enough staff, I go out and find them, hire them, train them. That's their dilemma. All of a sudden, there was this increase in cases. Well, you know what? Children get older. So I would assume that those that are in the system are in the system, and every year there will be additional. So when we speak to the DOE, we are told, we're working on it. I can't manage, we're working on it.
But the extent of your contact has been with the General Counsel's office.
Yes.
And there was a meeting we see here, Howard Friedman, is that
Yep.
correct?
He's
And-
general counsel for the DOE.
Right. And you never received, did you receive any notification or correspondence from the now deputy chief academic folks, the folks who they say that are in charge of compliance?
Nothing.
Silos. That's going to be one of the operative words that we've also heard here today. They're operating still in silos. Thank you very much. And we took down your information, and we'll be following up as well. Thank you, please.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Matthew Del Forte. I'm a partner at Shebbis Berman and Del Forte here in New York. We're an education law firm. I've practiced education law for the last 20 years. Thank you for this hearing. It's obviously critically important. I've created numerous schools for kids with disabilities over the past 20 years. I work actually with these two fine schools. Extraordinary people, extraordinary institutions. I'm here today to share our many clients' concerns and the problems that they've encountered with the DOE's failures at implementing the Mayor's Policy Initiative with respect to the settlements and payment of those settlements. But first, as I was listening today, I decided I was going to change things up, and I've submitted longer testimony. I will keep this brief, I promise. I decided I would answer 3 questions that you put to the DOE that you didn't get an answer to today. Chalkbeat reported, I think on Friday, that the DOE has spent $130 million on CSIS. So there's that answer. Related services, they've been mandated since 1975 by federal law. So you don't get to provide some, you don't get to provide most, you've got to provide all of them. Thirdly, with respect to the translation services, there was talk earlier about a chancellor's regulation. Well, you have a chancellor's regulation because that too is required by federal law. Pretty simple answers, I think. So, with respect to getting back to the problems associated with implementing the Mayor's Initiative, as you heard Dr. Raskin tell it, it's been unfulfilled. DOE is not making decisions on whether to settle these cases within 15 days, like the policy says. It often takes months, or they don't respond at all. When they do decide to settle, it takes months or years to negotiate and settle. I mean, I'm hearing from the schools that we represent, it's taking anywhere from minimally 8-10 months to more likely 14 months in most cases, and oftentimes 2 years. That's not acceptable. So for one of our clients, only 5 of the 50 cases were settled pursuant to the Mayor's policy, even though most of them, I think virtually every single one of them, met the criteria for settlement. And they didn't respond at all in 44 of those 50 cases to the 10-day letters. So with respect to payment cases are not being timely paid, there's a cash flow crisis, as you've heard. One of our schools had a $9 million receivable in May on cases that had been determined a year previous. So what's the solution? As you've heard, schools leverage everything, and they're being put at risk financially. What's the solution? I think that Councilmember Traeger, your resolution is for a czar is an excellent suggestion. I think along with that, perhaps maybe a special commissioner for special education to liaison with that czar, so that there's, you know, that word that you keep using all day long, accountability. That's critical to this entire process. There is no accountability. We need accountability. A czar and/or a special education, special commissioner, I think would go a long way to do that. I guess I will wrap it up here and say that we wholeheartedly support each of the, in addition to the resolution, each of the bills that are under consideration. We thank you for your dedication to this, and we are here. I will pledge that I personally and my law firm are here to assist you in any way that you see fit.
Thank you. And if the DOE spent less time fighting law firms, with all the resources they're spending to fight law firms, get the money for the children right away, we'd have less headaches in our system right now. So really appreciate you. Thank you for your work as well. Next, please.
Hi, good evening, Chair Traeger and members of the New York City Council committees. My name is Melissa Katz. I'm the director of the Special Education Collaborative and Inclusive Education Initiatives at the New York City Charter School Center. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, present testimony, that is. As you may or may not know, the Charter Center and the Special Education Collaborative work to support charter schools to ensure they can effectively serve students with disabilities as well as culturally and linguistically diverse students. In addition, actually just before coming to today's oversight hearing, I spent the day with 50 school leaders at day one of our Leading for Equity Institute, exploring how our perspectives and biases impact how we lead and the effects of systemic racism, sexism, and ableism on education. Of course, I was particularly interested in hearing insights into the inequities we identify in our schools when it comes to students with disabilities. Students with disabilities have been marginalized for years in our country's schools, and I was impressed with the level of commitment the charter school leaders showed to reflecting on their practices for these students. Over the past 5 years, charter schools have expanded their continuum of services, and enrollment of students with disabilities has grown in charter schools by 38%, to the point that there is only 1 percentage point difference between charter and district enrollment of students with disabilities. While charter schools are autonomous in many aspects, and this is following up on a comment that you heard earlier, the DOE is the LEA for special education in New York City charter schools, which means all decisions about the provision of special education services for charter students is made by the DOE's Committees on Special Education, the CSEs. While in my role as director of the Special Education Collaborative, I work very closely with the DOE. I'm in constant contact around special education services for charter schools with the DOE. Ultimately, the DOE is the decision maker. So the Special Education Collaborative and the Charter Center strongly support the goals of the legislation and resolutions today. The goals of transparency and accountability for service delivery in special education in all public schools, including in public charter schools, are longstanding priorities of ours as well. Finally, our submitted testimony goes into much more detail, but I wanted to close by saying that because of the unique structure that exists for special education students in New York City charter schools, with the DOE being the LEA and decision maker on services provided to charter school students, as well as maintaining the data on special education compliance in charter schools, we respectfully request that the Council expand the scope of the DOE's reporting on special education services to include charter school students. Currently, the annual report excludes charter school students. Since the DOE is the LEA for charter school students, they have all the data about the provision of special education services for students in charter schools and could provide that information that's required by the current report. Charter students are public school students, and we respectfully request that the same data that is available on district school special education services be made available to parents in the community about the provision of special education services for charter school students. Thank you.
Thank you. Fair point. Thank you very much, and I thank the panel for your work. And we did flag the institutions that you work with and represent, and we will follow up at our end because it's not acceptable, and it's real in terms of what I'm hearing today, and I've heard from other folks prior to this hearing, is that there are some providers at the brink of just financial ruin. They're about to collapse. And the impact is not just on your staff and the folks in the building. The DOE admits it does not have the capacity to accommodate the needs of those children. So where do they go? There's nowhere for them to go. This has to work, and that's the urgency that we need to have here today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Sure. Okay, next panel. Susan Crawford, Aurelia Mack, Michelle Norris, Michelle Cole Corgood, Leah Steinberg, and Maria Roca, I believe. Yeah, Friends of Sunset Park. Get started. Yes, may begin.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to tell our story. I am Maria Roca from Friends of Sunset Park in Brooklyn, and I'm here as a longtime community advocate and support for Sunset Park families with children with IEPs. This has been going on for over 2 decades. We don't charge anybody. We're available. We're there, and so forth. So I'm just going to do bullets rather than a long story. IEPs in the parents, we must have IEPs in the parents' dominant language. It is a must that they be available and that they be available in a timely manner. If families are able to participate and collaborate because they understand what is expected of them, our children are going to fare much better. Unless the schools don't want the parents in the schools, and that is the reason they're not facilitating the understanding of what is supposed to happen. So you can be the cynic in the room, which I do very well, and but at the same time, it is about the children. It's not about, that's at the bottom line. We're here because of the children, there's nothing else. And if you don't want the parents, you don't want to deal with parents, then go find another job, as far as I'm concerned. The next point that I'd like to talk about is that we must end pull-out therapeutic services. Push-in services are, in fact, more effective. And the Department of Education understands this and knows this. Further pull-out services exacerbate bullying, since the children leaving the classroom multiple times per week are regarded as not fitting in by their peers. They're not part of the flow, of the social flow of the classroom by being pulled out. They get disconnected. I will follow to the next point, and that is that a comprehensive audit of the Office of Student and Pupil Transportation is way, way overdue, particularly in view of the chaotic scheduling of mandated bus services for children with IEPs. In Sunset Park, pickup and drop-off of school buses, of children, can only be described as a rodeo on wheels. You have to stand on Fifth Avenue and watch the action. Dozens of buses crisscross our small neighborhood in bumper car fashion each morning and afternoon of every school day. How can a child derive the most benefit from the school day after 60 or 75 minutes going into school of riding in circles, and particularly children who are already challenged with social emotional issues as well, and on the way out of the neighborhood to schools throughout the borough? This situation begs the question, why are we sending all these children out of their neighborhood? inciting unnecessary stress, and reducing psychosocial advancement. When there are existing opportunities to build the needed accessible facilities within easy reach by the students and the families in Sunset, I'm talking about Sunset Park, I'm not going to talk about any other neighborhood. Therefore, eliminating or at least extensively reducing the number of buses and trips out of the neighborhood. And lastly, how many children will we continue to deliver to the Department of Corrections and to the adolescent and adult mental health institutions because we failed to deliver timely and comprehensive services from birth?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Right here I wrote good afternoon, but it's not afternoon anymore. My name is Leah Steinberg. I serve as the Director of Special Education Affairs for Agudath Israel of America. Agudath Israel was founded in 1922. It's a national organization headquartered here in Manhattan with an office in Washington, 7 regional offices across the country. Among our goals are advocacy on behalf of the Orthodox Jewish community and comprehensive community-based social services, serving all populations. As Director of Special Education Affairs at Agudath Israel, I was involved in the implementation of the city's 2014 policy on tuition reimbursements and have been working hard to help it reach its promise with New York City Department of Education as well as parents in special education schools. So at the 2014 press conference rolling out the policy, Senator Felder, Sheldon Silver, Assemblywoman Helene Weinstein, as well as the mayor and school chancellor Farina, all spoke of a unified goal. That goal would be that parents who have no choice but to place their children in non-public schools would no longer have to go through the harrowing process they had to year after year. What was promised was that once the placement met 5 basic criteria, the city would agree to settle. After a parent receives a 10-day letter, settlements would quickly be reached. Placement would be guaranteed to continue in future years if the child's IEP remained the same. As liaison between my community and New York City Department of Education, I have regularly scheduled meetings with the involved parties to see how things were progressing. The first year, everyone was happy, and it seemed that things were going in the right direction. The only concern was how year 2 would play out and if parents would see the relief that they wouldn't have to repeat the whole process as was promised. That never happened. However, as settlements were still coming in quickly, although not as quickly as the first year, they were willing to wait and see. Lo and behold, the 3rd year started really getting bad. Instead of seeing improvement, things seemed to be slowing down dramatically, and all talk about the automatic approval was all but forgotten. The impact is not only being felt by parents, but the schools are having a very hard time meeting payroll as well. Giving these children a quality education is vital, and the special education schools in the Orthodox Jewish community give their heart and soul to make it happen. Without timely reimbursements, the schools are struggling simply to survive. At this point, it seems the whole process has frozen. Getting annual reports may help move the process along somewhat, and we commend the City Council for this proposal. However, the most important contribution the City Council could make is taking the steps to ensure the process achieves the original goal of the 2014 policy, that parents should not have to file cases every single year, and that funding should flow in a timely fashion.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman Traeger and esteemed members of the City Council Committee on Education. First of all, thank you for your time and leadership on these critical issues. My name is Michelle Kuehl-Korgood. I am, like you, a former teacher. I'm a former special education teacher that left teaching special education 28 years ago, giving way too much about my age, to pursue a career in legal advocacy for children with special needs. I've watched this process evolve in New York City for 25 years, for a quarter of a century. Every year, the process of pursuing an appropriate education for a child with a disability is filled with more bureaucracy and more delays. As taxpayers, we should all understand we can either provide the necessary services to enable a child with a disability to grow up and become an employable, tax-paying, productive adult, Or we cannot provide the services, and we can keep that child on public assistance from age 21 through their entire life expectancy. The math is very easy. I suggest it's not even high school math. And to Councilman Corneghi's point earlier, the poet Gabriel Mistral said it far better than I ever could. Many things can wait. Children cannot. Today, their bones are being formed, their blood is being made, their senses are being developed. To them, we cannot say tomorrow. Their name is today. 1 year in the life of a 5-year-old not receiving services is not the same thing as you or I waiting 1 year in our life for anything else. We are missing critical times. As Ms. Steinberg and others have stated, Mayor de Blasio announced a policy and set of procedures in 2014 to implement and streamline this process. That was so important in this field that I got permission from my surgeon the day after a 3-hour surgery under general anesthesia to be transported to New York City to attend that meeting in person, because I couldn't imagine not being there and I couldn't reschedule my surgery. For 2014-15, the process worked, and in almost all cases, we got the determination letters within 15 business days of parents sending out these letters of concern, 10-day notice letters. And for most of the cases, the entire settlement was done in months. Now, the policy is a promise unfulfilled. First of all, even if the case resolves through settlement, it commonly takes 1 to 2 years and sometimes even longer. When I asked my staff to start compiling information for this Friday afternoon when I found out about this, there are cases we have that are 2.5 years since that 10-day notice letter was found. And as of today, if the city wants to talk, the Department of Ed wants to talk about statistics, as of today, 6 months into the 18-19 school year, we still don't have responses from the city to 10-day notice letters in over 80 cases, or almost 50% of cases where parents in our office submitted a 10-day notice letter. Obviously, that's not the only kind of case we handle. What makes it worse, and one thing that hasn't been brought out, is that you need to understand that that's only the first delay in the process, and that one gets compounded geometrically with the other delays. So once there's a determination, they say we want to settle, we provide the requested documents, and then wait 3 to 4 months to get a settlement offer. And we're told by the DOE's Office of Legal Services that they're inundated and they deal with things in the order that they get the information, which means that now the parent can pay for the fact that it took them 6 months to, you'll hear from a client of mine, 18 months to get a determination. I would be at that impartial hearing with that parent today had I not emailed General Counsel Howard Friedman last week. And you asked who we contact. We contact the attorney assigned. We contact their team leader. We contact the managing attorneys. And after a year and a half, I contacted General Counsel. Guess what? That day I had a determination. I shouldn't have to contact General Counsel. That parent of twins with autism should not wait, 18 months. In one of my cases, we reached agreement on January 31, 2018, a verbal settlement. As of 3 weeks ago, over 1 year later, they still had not even applied for approval from the Controller's Office. We're still waiting. As City Council members, you have the power to intercede by requiring the DOE to report on each data point of the process. This process is broken down entirely. It needs sunlight in order to shed light on where the breakdowns are so that they can be addressed. I am in favor of all of the resolutions and bills that are currently there, and I stand ready to help you in any regard. There's one other quick point I just want to bring out. I could go toe-to-toe with Corinne Rello Anselmi about so many untruths and would welcome the opportunity to do it, but there's one that I want you to keep in mind. When they talk about compliance, they say only 22,000 kids aren't getting all their services, or 22% of 44,000 kids. They're not telling you about the kids whose IEPs they changed to remove the programs and services that they didn't have in the schools, because when they did the reorganization a few years ago, they sent a training manual out to every principal in the city saying, you now have to provide every service on a kid's IEP, but here's what you do. Here's 6 case studies. Kid comes in with an IEP, there's services and programs on the IEP that the school can't provide. Every one of those 6 case studies, you reconvene the IEP team meeting and you convince the parent the wisdom of changing the IEP to the services that you have.
Do you have a copy of that email memo?
I have to go through, it's from years ago, and I
Right.
don't know if I still have the training manual. But there were 6 case studies, and it went out to every New York City principal.
I'm going to flag for our staff to try to look this up and to find it. And the one thing, I appreciate you're seeing this from a number of lenses. You're a former educator, still an educator,
And a parent.
and an attorney. When you deal with the general counsel's office, and I don't know this answer, I wonder if anyone in that room is an educator. Because as you just pointed out, there's no time here. We can't lose precious time. And that's one of my calls for a clear line of accountability, someone that has the authority and the power to go across any of these offices in the DOE and say, do your job. Fill out this paperwork, get this done. Because that's what I think it's a matter of, someone just, filling out a piece of paper, signing things and getting things out, signing a check.
Yeah.
It's a $32 billion department. They have money. We need to do more, but this is the largest city department in our government. And they receive money from the federal government, from the state, and from the city, and they need more resources, no question about it. But this, I think, is a matter of either just inertia and indifference and basic competence to get stuff out and fill things out and get things done. And I really, really appreciate your powerful testimony. You had very quickly, and then we'll turn to the...
A very quick point. I think one of the very important things that may help this, that's really urgent, one of the very important things that, you touched on is that the transparency as the process goes along is not there. And that is something that we've been asking for a very, very long time. And I think if we had that, it could help. But right now, everybody, all the schools, all the parents, everyone is just lost. It's a terrible situation.
Yeah, because all the responsibility is broken up into so many different pieces in the DOE. And we're trying to piece it together. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, please. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Aurelia Mack. I am the CEO and founder of Wings of Success for Children with Special and Exceptional Needs. I am the mother of 12 children, 9 girls, 3 boys, and I have 30 grandchildren. Out of the grandchildren, I've assisted in getting 11 of them into NPS schools. My 3 sons actually went to Xaverian. All of my children now are successful. They're educators, one in the military, one in FDNY EMT, but that's due to me fighting tooth and nail. I'm a retired correction officer, and I see the travesty of our children of color, Black and Latino children, the suspension rate extraordinarily high, the dumping ground for special education children who have the intelligence, but because they don't know where to put them and their behavioral challenges, they are just thrown into 12-to-1 programs, and they sit there and do not get educated. I have a daughter that's a para now, and she called me the first day of work crying because she said these children were sitting in rooms not being educated. I have advocated for hundreds of families. I've gotten them private school. I've sat in due process hearing. I sat in IEP meetings, and the meetings are a dictatorship. They are rude and disrespectful to parents. Of course, you always have 1 or 2 that are not, but they sit quietly by. When I go in as an advocate, they do not even want the parents to have an advocate. And they will tell parents, you don't need an advocate. So especially bilingual parents, they'll just give them a paper and tell them to sign. I've advocated for 18-year-olds that have 3rd grade reading levels and just sit in school. And again, the pipeline to prison is real. And the majority of children sitting in special education are in juvenile justice. And I've seen it firsthand, even at work. These adults that cannot read. And this is ridiculous. I sat there and I heard DOE speak, and that is not the people that sit at the table. And the ones that do sit at the table, when they refer to the CSE chairperson, they ignore you, or they're not even at the meeting, and they're giving their response. Parents are not treated as equal. They're not treated as team members, ever. You know, once it goes around the room, yay, nay, that's it. They don't even care, and the parent is the one that knows the child the most. As far as due process hearing, the families that I advocate for cannot even afford attorneys. When it was my time, when my children were younger, I called every attorney I knew just to beg for pro bono services, because at the time, I had 3 children that needed services, needed to get into a private school. They told me to pick one. So I picked one, and I did the cases for the others. But up to this day, my son came and told me, Ma, if you did not fight for me, I don't know where I would have been. Because during that time, gangs were after the children that had special needs. The suicide rate for children with special needs is extremely high. So I'm here not only as a mother and a grandmother, but as an advocate, and I will continue to fight. And I applaud you, because I wasn't coming today, somebody told me, and I could tell how much you care. And you sit here and you're listening, so definitely applaud you for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Crawford, Director of the Right to Read Project and a member of the Arise Coalition. And as I said to you out in the hall, I'm a dyslexia sister of Debbie Myers and many other moms. And like climate denial, dyslexia denial has a history that at this point goes back 50 years since the advent of the whole language movement. And I think we can finally start to break through that as generations turn over in the DOE. But it's been allowed, dyslexia denial, allowed to be fostered and then to fester in the face of science in all this time. There are treatments that work. The dyslexic brain has been shown on fMRIs back in the 1990s. The reading panel report came out with 5 pillars that should be observed in all reading instruction. Just not happening yet. And then I want to give some recommendations, but I do want to respond to some of the things I heard earlier in the day. You've been asking, why do families have to sue to get what their children are entitled to? And up until I heard this panel, and 1 or 2 before, I thought, because back 20 years ago when I was going through this, little would be said to me, but when it was all over, I didn't understand what was going on at the time, and I just got my kids' help outside of the system, and we just paid out of pocket for it. But in retrospect, I realized that they were waiting for me to sue for private placement. So there's this whole kabuki dance that's going on, and then the suits go on, and now they're languishing, not for days, weeks, or months, but now for years. One of the parents on the earlier panel said, folks that almost just want you out of their office, and we've all experienced that. Help should be easy, welcoming, and supportive. One of the things that's come up in the Arise Coalition is that kindergartners are just being referred immediately to D75 without evaluations of any kind, presumably because they're not reading by the end of kindergarten or something. You mentioned that 220,000 students have IEPs. That would be 5% or 20% of the population. In fact, 20% of the population is dyslexic. So 220,000 students alone have dyslexia, and then there are all the other learning disabilities. And we know for sure that the dyslexics aren't being attended to unless it gets extracted from the system. And as she just said, they often end up in prison if they aren't helped because they can't function for years and years and years with what they're being asked to do. As recommendations, I want to point out there's, in Barron's, there's an article about opportunity costs. And Mayor de Blasio is offering another $300 million towards special ed, and each of us would have a place to put that $300 million. So each of us in this room, if it were up to me, if I were spending it, if it went right into dyslexia treatments that bypassed the schools, that were handled at the district level, until reality catches up with the science. So the parents had a place to go, maybe through the community schools, but certainly through the district office. The child could be tested. It's easy to test for now compared to how it had been in the past, and remediated. and then they can just go back in the classroom and thrive, which happened with my kids. So thank you very much for doing this. I just want to make sure I got to everything. One of the things that I think goes on is principals are under pressure to not over-identify, but there's a double-edged sword. If a principal is accommodating, then parents cluster to that school. And this idea, we'd all like to see this book that's explained how to bypass what's big. I had a parent call me recently who said the principal won't give what the person from NYU said my child needs, just won't do it. And we need to look deeply into that. I suggest you do a whole set of these just on the literacy issue, because we're just scratching the surface. Thanks very much.
No, I appreciate that, and we're going to have budget hearings coming up shortly. We're going to dig deeper on this $300 million figure, but I'm afraid that money is not new money, but money that's already been scheduled to keep up with the cost of compliance. And so, which quite frankly, we still have a lot more work to do, obviously, from the testimony that we're hearing today. But and also the state has some responsibility here too, quite frankly, because they, they pass on certain mandates, certain things, which is okay, but give us resources to meet these mandates, to meet the needs of our kids. They are still shortchanging us. So, it's definitely accountability, it's definitely urgency, but it's also, we do need some resources to better meet their needs. But once we have the money, you need folks who know what they're doing to do their job. Correct. It's as simple as, and to have a heart, and to look at it through a lens of compassion and empathy and a sense of urgency. It's not just some bureaucrat sitting at Tweed. You need someone with the urgency to say, get this done now. That's what we need more of, I think, in government. So thank you very much for that testimony.
I just wanted to add, it was on my list, about the czar idea, and then you mentioned the state. And in fact, there are representatives of the state education special ed department in every district who can go in and intervene on behalf of the students. And parents don't know this, and the schools, either they know it or they don't volunteer these people to come in. But if the state could be that check and balance on this city, that would be something.
I mean, it seems that everyone has the number to legal on speed dial. I mean, that's the only office everyone seems to know very well. But that's about it. But I hear you. I definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much. And next we'll hear from you. Thank you.
So I'm going to read two testimonies. I'm reading on behalf of my son, A.B. Weitzman, who is in the Student Accessibility Advisory Council, and you've probably seen him on video. He's the one who hits the switches with his chest. Good afternoon. He was hopeful. I am a sophomore at Bard Queens, and I am severely disabled and medically fragile. I have therapy and awesome para-assistive technology, daily feeding by G-Tube. And I have a dedicated bunch of teachers and staff led by Principal Val. I am very lucky. When I am at school, I am supported and included. Teaching me makes my teachers find ways to improve class for everyone. The administration changes policies to be inclusive and accommodate my needs, and they never complain. The other students pick me to be on their project team. I want every IEP student to have a school like Bard Queens because we are all entitled to support and inclusion. Thank you. Couldn't come because he had therapy today. This is from me. And I come and I complain a lot. But I came today to tell you about what...
Get your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Michelle Norris, and that was Abraham Weitzman.
Thank you.
So I want to tell you what special education looks like when it's at its best. My son, as I said, attends Bard Queens, and they follow his IEP consistently. He has services the first week of school. His therapy equipment and his assistive technology equipment are ready and waiting for him in September. His teachers meet in June to make sure that his assistive technology is programmed so when he shows up for chemistry on the first day, it's ready to go. His special educators and his general educators work together. They have periods set aside for it to meet And they work with the administration to make sure all his educational materials are accessible. They're responsive to us, and they're responsive to him when he needs a modification outside what's covered in the IEP. His guidance counselor started the test accommodation process with the College Board without me asking her. They're now complete and in place in time for his PSATs next month. The administrator put an extra locker for him on each floor to keep his medical supplies and extra clothing, and they set his schedule to minimize his floor change so he has time to go to the bathroom. They set up an extra space in the library for study and meetings and for socializing with friends because the cafeteria is overwhelming. This is happening because Bard Queens has an extraordinary principal, Valerie Thompson, and she has hired an extraordinary staff who are too numerous for me to list, but it shouldn't be extraordinary. Every student should be having this. Every student has the right to this. But what we really see all day here, and I've been listening for a while, is disparity. Disparity based on economics, disparity based on race, disparity based on district, which is related to both of those, disparity based on who's in a segregated environment and who's in an inclusive environment. And the shame of all of this is that they're capable of doing what my son has. They're capable. There are principals out there who can do it. We need all the principals to be trained to do it. And this is like my mantra now. The principal is the CEO. They must be trained to be in charge of everyone, not just the easy kids, not just the kids who show up ready to learn with no extra help. They need training. We need to mandate principal training about dyslexia, about physical disabilities, about where the hearing loop needs to be in their building, because they should be asking for it, not the parent. The principals need to be trained. How many principals came from being a special educator? That's how you become a principal, right? You become a teacher, you work your way up, become a principal. But very few of them start off teaching special education. And so they don't come from that background, they don't have that grounding. We must mandate training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to close this panel, I think we have two more panels here. Good observation. In the school I worked in, my principal hired a former special education teacher to be in charge of our compliance in our school, and she taught us a lot that we didn't know. And so I thank you so much for that, for your advocacy. I really thank the panel for your great work. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Next panel will hear Esther Mahmoud, Alicia Mercado, Robert Burt, Julia Lupino, and Danielle. I think we'll call up some more folks. I think we only have two people in the panel. Is Diana Williams still here? Diana Williams? No? She had to leave? Okay. Claudia Cruz? Claudia, you can come up in that panel. And I think we have room for two more. Okay. All right, so you may begin whenever you're ready.
Hello? Okay. Hi, my name is Alicia Mercado, and I'm the mother of a 14-year-old. Her name is Olivia Rose, and she struggles with ADHD and anxiety disorder. She was removed from public schools only after middle school failed her miserably, both academically and in terms of basic safety. She has been recommended to attend an inclusion ICT class with 2 teachers, but typically there was only 1 teacher in the class. According to her IEPs, failed to make any progress in reading and math. According to her IEPs, the public school knew Olivia only needed to work in small groups and be in a structured, supportive classroom with few distractions, but they could not provide this environment for her. The district required Olivia be in a school for extensive periods of the day beyond the school day, and she needed to give up a lot of enrichment. Like, she was in drumming, she was in soccer, she was in the free arts program, none of which she could attend. She couldn't even go to her therapy sessions because she would have to be in breakfast club, lunch study, after school, just to catch up because her IEP they weren't adhering to her IEP. The public school staff informed me that Olivia was failing all of her major subjects and that perhaps the school was no longer appropriate for her, but they didn't provide any options for her other than attending summer school. Olivia became a victim of severe bullying. In summer school, Olivia was physically assaulted by one student and sexually assaulted by another. It became so severe that I had to attend summer school with her each day, and finally the teacher advised us to go home for the sake of our own safety after she witnessed students threatening our lives. We found placement for Olivia at the community school, a small specialized program approved by the New York State Education Program to serve children with disabilities. I had begged the IEP team to recommend a program just like this for Olivia, but they kept recommending the same failing program. Finally, in mid-August, I sent the district a long letter recounting my concerns and stating my intention to place her in community school in the absence of an appropriate program where Olivia could learn and be safe. It was my understanding that according to the policy set forth by the mayor, the district would respond within 15 business days or by mid-September. However, to this date, there has been no response, despite my numerous inquiries by my attorney to the DOE's legal department. At this point, DOE's failure to respond is threatening my daughter's continued placement in the first school where she is finally experiencing success. After years of the DOE failing my daughter, she had begun to dread school, which had become a place of danger and failure. But now that she is at the community school, she loves school again and is passing all of her classes. It is incomprehensible to me that the city could ignore my letters for over 6 months and fail to make any determination as to whether they are interested in resolving this matter.
Good evening. My name is Robert Burt. I'm the father of twin boys, Jaden and Jarrett, both on the autism spectrum. Just to start, we started out in District 75. First few years of their schooling was in District 75, and there was lots of problems. Some of the most egregious was the bullying that was going on, to the extent where the kid had my son pull his pants down in the yard. There was nobody watching, so, you know. And then my other child, Jaden, they lost him 3 times in a 2-week period. And he had a one-to-one para who would pick him up off the bus. It was crazy, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Okay, so what we decided to do is to move them out. So we got Jared into a state-approved school. We got Jaden into a non-state approved school. Jaden was really regressing the 2 years that he was at 206 in Queens. And we got him into the school, and it's been a wonderful sight to see, you know. But we still got to fight. We got to fight with in 2014, in the beginning when they started this signing off on stuff, when the mayor said that he was signing off on schools. it was really an easy process. Even the staff at CSC, they were nice. They would sit you down. They would recommend things that they think you needed, services that they think would help your child. And then it changed a couple years ago, and it became like a dictatorship, where you have people, and don't piss them off, where you have people who actually sit down and tell you what you're going to have and what you're not going to have. And they don't care what you got to say about it. They don't care what your concerns are. Jaden always had a problem with, the psychologist called it pocketing food, because he'll eat something, it'll hold it in his mouth, and he won't chew it, which is a choking hazard. And they refused to let him keep his parrot that he had for 2 years, that the nice people had gave him. They took, it seemed like in the last four IEP meetings, 3 IEP meetings, every year they look at something else they could take. I guess they're trying to cut back on the expenses. Okay, so we just finished an impartial hearing just this fall for 16-17 school year. 16-17 school year. We just got finished. We just got a determination from the hearing officer. And then we were supposed to have been at an impartial hearing today for the 17-18 school year, but my lawyer called the council and they canceled the hearing. But it seems like they're trying to force us to back into the DOT, even though their school psychologist who sits on their CSE team, on their IEP team, she has stated at least twice off the record that the school he's at is the best fit for him. But on the record, we had to be moved to a DOT school. So they really don't care about the children. They really don't care about their needs. They really don't care about their safety. All they care about is counting beans to make sure that all the beans are counted right, and that they got all that. And I was sitting here today listening to their budget, and I'm shocked. But then why are they fighting parents all the time, over paying this tuition for these private schools? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so now we're in the process. We got to call back for the 18-month. It took them 18 months to get back to us on a 10-day notice. Now we're gonna see what happened with that. And the problem, really quick, right? The problem. This doesn't just cause a problem for the school. This just doesn't cause a problem for the parents with the anxiety and the nervousness. Jaden once heard that he might have to move to another school. Sorry. Shit. I said I wasn't going to do that. He was upset for 4 days. For 4 days, he was upset. Every 5-10 minutes, he would come, Daddy, I got to go to another school. Daddy, why I got to go to another school? Daddy, I don't want to go to another school. 4 days. It took me 4 days and the counselors at the school to kind of like get him straightened where. So I learned the lesson that make sure he don't know what's going on, and it's a shame I have to do that. But DOE, I sat here today and I listened to their their excuses for why they're the way they are, and it's a shame. But anyway, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I wish I had more time because I got a lot more to talk about. But thank you.
Buenas noches a todos. Gracias por la oportunidad de permitirme hablar acá.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Two mics? Can I do that? Okay. You have one, and you have one.
So I'll repeat. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to present here tonight.
Mi nombre es Claudia Cruz y mi hija se llama Nycc Pérez.
My name is Claudia Cruz, and my daughter is named Nycc Pérez.
Ella tiene síndrome de Down.
She has Down syndrome.
Soy sobreviviente también de cáncer de seno.
And I am a cancer survivor.
No ha sido fácil para mí. Es mi única hija.
It hasn't been easy for me. She's my only child.
He sufrido discriminación en el hospital con otros padres. Cuando ven a los niños, le dicen, no te acerques, porque cuidado, no la toques, eso es discriminación.
She has experienced for her child discrimination, whether it was at the hospital when Lisette was born, as well as from other parents telling their children not to go near Lisette as because they're uncomfortable, their ignorance. Okay.
También en una oficina pública de WIC recibí un trato tampoco agradable para mi hija.
Okay. You know, even in a WIC office, which the treatment was not that nice towards my child.
Todo eso no es agradable. Maestros, terapeutas me dicen, los niños Down syndrome son así, no hay mucho que hacer.
I have received even the behavior from teachers sort of telling me to accept what is and not to expect too much, that children with Down syndrome are, you know, can do so much.
Las experiencias de mis amistades con sus niñas de Down syndrome me ponen muy triste.
Okay, I have friends who also have daughters with Down syndrome, and their experiences as well make me very sad.
Estoy segura que mi hija va a llegar a ser una persona independiente y muy preparada.
I am sure that my daughter will grow to be independent and able.
Actualmente va a cumplir 4 años, ya dice las vocales, habla muy bien, juega, es muy independiente.
She's now about to be 4 years old, and she's now beginning to vocalize and plays independently.
Yo le pedí a la maestra, ella está en pre-kinder, le pedí a la maestra el IEP en español para poder colaborar juntos, maestro, terapeuta y yo.
I asked for the IEP to be made available to me in Spanish so that I could be part of Lisette's team. So it would be the teacher, the therapist, and myself.
Me dijeron, no lo puedo entregar, para mí es difícil.
Okay, they told me that they couldn't make it available, though we have taken action about that, and for her it was very difficult to hear that.
Si a las personas que hablan inglés les es difícil, imagínense en mi caso que el idioma es también una barrera.
Imagine if for English-speaking parents this process is difficult. With the language barrier, everything gets further complicated.
Otra cosa más, las familias de Sunset Park de mi barrio, mandamos a los niños en el autobús. Mi hija viaja 1 hora 10 minutos en autobús. Ella llega estresada, enojada, histérica.
Yeah. Herself and other families in Sunset Park, the children are traveling by bus, and often the trip is an hour or an hour and 10 minutes. Mind you, on the B63 bus, and I'm adding this, which is not the best line in Sunset Park because of all the double parking and whatnot, that trip door to door is 20 minutes, door to door. So it's taking what I alluded to before about the circling of the buses, and she experiences it. And it is an hour to an hour and 10 minutes every morning and every afternoon. If that doesn't do something to a child that is already stressed and it's, gets confused, what it would do to you and me. So just imagine a child that is not even 4 years old.
Me gustaría que las escuelas de Sunset Park incluyeran a nuestros hijos para que ellos no viajen muy largo.
I would love it for the Sunset Park schools to be able to integrate children like her daughter, so this traveling did not need to happen.
Pero tengo miedo por la discriminación que hay hacia los niños porque los otros niños no comprenden. Si los adultos no comprendemos, los niños no comprenden también.
But at the same time, I'm scared because the children often don't understand. But imagine if the adults are not understanding, the situation is not a good one.
Pero, sorry.
No, take your time, take your time.
Yo creo en mi hija, pienso y hago todo lo posible por hacer que ella un día sea independiente y no necesite otras personas para que la ayude.
I do and will continue to do whatever is necessary for my daughter because I have faith in her that she will be able to reach a point where she could be independent and be able to do for herself.
Mi meta es que ella vaya a una escuela normal, pero que se incorpore como un niño normal.
My goal is for my daughter to be integrated into a regular school and then be able to participate in a regular school day.
Solamente, gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, for all of your powerful testimony. Just a quick question. I heard that she had asked for the IEP to be translated. Is that correct?
Él quiere aclarar que si usted había pedido el IEP en español. Yes, no, you're right, yes.
And who was it that said that they could not do it?
I was there the second time she asked with her. First it was, está preguntando que quién fue que no, que le dijo que no se lo podía.
Okay.
There was the special education, the IEP coordinator in the school said it, the teacher said it, and when we pressed the issue, because I had asked her to write a note in Spanish asking for the IEP in English, in Spanish so that she would understand. And it was pushed back. They were not happy with me specifically.
This is a district public school?
No, it is it's a special school for children with disabilities.
Okay.
¿Cómo se llama la escuela?
William O'Connor.
William O'Connor is
Okay.
It is a it's under the auspices of the Catholic Diocese.
Okay.
Of Brooklyn. But it was clear that they were not going to budge, and they were one of the person, the IEP coordinator
Right.
person. She got indignant with me, and I was, I've been through this very often. More than I like to say, but I just stood my ground and calmly I said, well, you may not know this, but this is, she's entitled so that she can collaborate. I just turned it around and softened it up. But for me to have to, for us to have to sit calmly and diffuse the situation because the professional is trying to manipulate it, totally unnecessary, but I was just happy to be able to be there with her, and she had her note. We asked for a copy of the note, signed that it had been received. I thought she was going to blow me out of there. I said, no, that's, that. And so she hasn't received it yet, mind you. This was, ¿cuándo fue la última vez que fuimos a reunión en la escuela?
En enero.
It was January, the meeting was. And nothing has been received yet. I'm not surprised, but still, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get her information because this is not even negotiable. This is federal law.
Which I explained that. Él dice
Yeah.
que esto no hay nada que negociar ya que esto es ley federal. And I had explained that to her to calm her down, that she was not asking for anything but no one told her that she wasn't. What was said there, that yes, this is part of the intake process that the parents are advised. I have been through dozens and dozens of these accompanied parents throughout Sunset Park over the last 20-odd years. No, not once has anyone said to a parent in my presence, you're entitled to this. It is I who's, because I just happened, because I went through my own with my son who has done very well, thank goodness, and 20 odd years ago, and nothing has changed.
I believe you. I believe you.
Gracias.
You're not alone, and you have a lot of people that support you and want the very best for your daughter and for your family. She deserves nothing less than the best.
Okay.
And so we'll take down her information about the school information, because I think they need to be given an education about federal law and mandates and requirements. So thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. Thank you. Sure. Yes, the last panel and the most patient panel for they get the gold stars today, right? I think S. David Jacobson, Laura Esperanza, I believe. Espinoza, I'm sorry. Claudia and Sheila. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Oh, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Laura. I know I'm trying to say in English because I'm long time ago I tried to learn English. That's why I'm here. So my name is Laura Espinosa, mother of twins with special needs. Why I'm here, my son is 18 years old. When he was 6 years old, he suffered a lot in public school. Bullying, mental and physical, not just for the children, it's for a person who works in the school. And he just need a speech therapy in that moment. So since at that time, when I had in 2014, I have twins. And I saw them, so they need a little help. But I didn't want to ask for evaluation because I have a bad experience in the bus, in the school, and I didn't want them to put again an IP. So since that time, my twins is going to evaluating autism. So now I came today. Not only, I hope to Department of Education hear all this testimony because they need to be here. They need to be listened to us. So I came here only today, not just for giving testimony, but also I want to say that I will not sit down and wait for DOE decide for my future, my children, with completely disproportionate system in public school. In my opinion, the laws that they have existing DOE on special education must be modified to give equity support for a student with IEP throughout to the city. Prevention should be made each year to the program. Evaluation of the student with IEP, their progress academic each year, not only when the parent asks for it, because they will not know if improve or change the service and the students and their progress. And the existing programs must be extended all public school in low-income community, as our community in Sunset Park. We don't have nothing in the school, in the public school, nothing. Which child has to go out to the community to receive the service? That's what I don't want for my kids. I don't want to pass the same as a long time ago for my big son. So, DOE must also to move accessible, giving adequate support for our children, such as pre-K for all. We cannot call for all when this doesn't exist in the public school. In many cases, children at early age with a special need doesn't have adequate support in the public school in their area. And they must go far from their homes, spending hours in the world receiving help that they need in the age of 4 years. In us is continue fighting and looking to way to the education system and completely include all children because they are for future of this country. Thank you very much for the opportunity and grateful what you doing, and we are going to support you. You will hear us. We are a study group in the community to fight our right and learn what IP is, what education, what is the good education for our kids and in the public school in our community. Thank you so much and God bless you.
Good night, buenas noches. My name is Claudia Galicia, and I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Micaela Galicia, who is here making origami, but she got bored. She left. We have had really tough years because my daughter is on the spectrum. She has autism, and it's been very difficult for our family to enter the system. When she first was diagnosed, she was giving ABA therapy, which is the adequate for children on the spectrum. And then, boom, we were thrown to the DOE. It's time for you to move. Let's have your 5-year-old meeting. And on that meeting, they told us, well, there's no ABA in the DOE, so your daughter has to go to a regular school. And even though my daughter had a mandate of Spanish in her IEP, I was told, we won't give you any school. I had to go to Advocates for Children to secure a placement for my daughter. So I got a school in September. Days before the school started. And it's this big discrimination in the DOE to families of color who speak a different language. So my daughter had to stay in Spanish because my mother doesn't speak English and my sister doesn't speak English. To remove my daughter to English only, it would be like it would separate our families. She would not be able to interact with grandma or with Titi. So I've been fighting this discrimination. There's only 2 schools in Brooklyn. PS 89, which is dual language ICT program, and there's one school in Sunset Park that has dual language ICT program, and there is only one NEST program, dual language, for the whole city. I confronted the mayor and some of those liars that were here from the DOE. They're always telling us, well, there's not enough people. So when we went into the DOE, they removed instantly the Spanish mandate. So now I no longer have the right. My daughter does no longer have the right to stay in her language. So I went to an impartial hearing. So I got pendency, and I know you've been hearing. So this pendency, I haven't been able to enforce the pendency. So I think the system, government is failing us. By law, I have parent training, which I haven't had ever. But who is going to enforce the pendency? Who's going to enforce the parent training and all the services that my daughter is owed? There's so much money in litigation right now, because my daughter's case is going to go to federal court so she can get her pendency, because my daughter is regressing. It has took my family years for my daughter to talk, to be high functioning, and right now, less than a year, I can see how she's regressing. My daughter is a gifted and talented children with autism, and I'm very proud of her. But if she doesn't have the right services, then she regresses. And that's why I'm here to tell you that it's a crime. It's a crime that the DOE has the face to come and see us parents and told us, like, I asked for my IEP also to be translated. It's been 4 years. I haven't gotten a response. So we have a Department of Education that doesn't care about parents. My hearing officers told me, I said, look, I can't come to so many hearings. Is there any way that we can settle this case? And he was like, well, I don't care, you asked for this, so now you're gonna have to come 3 days in a row. So we're broke, we have no money, we have to spend all this time trying to get services, and we come and we see the DOE with millions of dollars in their pocket, not giving us the right thing. We're not asking them for much. We just want whatever is right for our children. They saw my IEP, so they went into the system and they erased the services without an IEP meeting. So that's one of the things that I'm fighting. So no one can go into this system and just scratch things. Fortunately, I have those old IEPs that have the mandate, but they just went into the system, and in my next IEP meeting, it was something different.
So just to be clear, you're saying that you're waiting 4 years for the IEP to be translated, is that correct?
Correct.
Right after this hearing, we're going to take down your information and the school information. That's just not acceptable. I mean, there's obviously a disconnect from what we heard from the DOE and what families are experiencing on the ground. So we'll take down your information right after this hearing, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
I appreciate you. Thank you, please.
Hello, my name is Sheila Saponiak, and I applaud any action that can help improve the special education system and services in NYC. Thank you for having this meeting and staying so late and listening to our stories. Especially I'm here to ask why it's taking so long for the city to pay for the reimbursement of the tutoring services mandated by the hearing officer that we as a family had to undertake when the system failed us. When my son's middle school failed to provide the mandated sets as outlined on his IEP and then concealed the failure, we had no other choice than to seek legal redress to help us pay for the educational services he required in order to remain in a mainstream school. We prevailed in our case and since June of 18 have been waiting for reimbursement. Our son is now in high school where there is no direct remedial SETS support. Our reimbursement is critical in providing the essential educational tutoring and foundational skills that the system failed to provide him early on. If payments cannot be made by the DOE in a timely period, then it should be mandated that they pay finance charges on the outstanding balances. As a family, we continually have to fight for educational rights, and now to have to battle to collect the monies we were awarded underscores the DOE's lack of understanding of the economic struggles families face ensuring their children receive the promised education they need to be productive, successful citizens. I want to thank you for taking the time and giving me your full attention. I also just wanted to point out a few things just to reiterate and to underscore what other people have said. My son, I had the same, my son is right now in high school, and when he was at a good high school, he's at LaGuardia. When I came in for my IEP meeting, they told me that they would not be able to provide the SET services that he was directed to have. They said they couldn't comply. I said that I didn't agree, and I wasn't going to agree to that. I was determined, but what happened? The next year, I looked at my IEP when it was sent out to me, and it had been erased. And when I talked to the school psychologist who had done it, he passed the buck and said it was not his responsibility and this was done by somebody else. And I have a meeting coming up this Monday with them, and we're going to sit there and continue to fight it with them. There was another about a hearing officer at the DOE, which was a funny story. When we went to the DOE for our hearing, and the officer from the DOE heard that my son was receiving sets at school, they said, well, that should be enough. Why do you need additional tutoring? And I said, don't you understand? What they told me is that there is no remedial teaching in high school. Sorry. It's a study hall. And there you have 4 years that aren't going to be addressed. So, I mean, we've had to do this ourselves to get those tutors that we can find. And another point you mentioned, like, earlier on, this morning about how you cannot find services. Well, after the middle school had concealed the fact, and I pressed to get some kind of reimbursement sheet, they gave me a packet of people to call to get sets. And I did. I went through the entire 200 people on the list. I emailed all of them. There was nobody, either the list was out of date, people weren't doing it anymore, and also the money that they were providing was nothing that these people were the skill level you needed to deal with a language-based learning disability, because my son is mildly dyslexic and has another processing issue, you need specially skilled people. Also, I just wanted to point out, I had a daughter who had gone to Beacon, who has since graduated, and she had come down with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And I wanted to point out what another woman had said just about the sensitivity of dealing with people who have physical disabilities. Because when she needed to have additional time, and we had doctor's notes and doctor's letters, it was up to me, not to the principal, and the IEP coordinator did not go and talk to the teachers. Even when we had problems, it was up to me to always talk to each teacher each year and discuss, these are the issues that we have, these are the kind of accommodations that he needs, this is what has to happen. And yet still, you found that people could not understand it. And that when she was supposed to be given additional time for papers and stuff, and it was demoralizing for her, because then she was really a brilliant student. And she was getting marked down because she couldn't write. She couldn't, be at class at 8 in the morning, and they wouldn't schedule anything later for her because her arthritis wouldn't allow her to move. So, we also had a transportation issue where the bus, she was supposed to get a bus. We sent letters, we did everything. The bus would not take her because she had a walker and she would have to go on the elevated platform. It was a liability. They didn't want that to happen. And so she had no bus service. So then we kept on fighting for it. All they made me do was keep on writing letters and push it off until she finally graduated and they didn't have to deal with it anymore. For her junior and senior year, thank God, we had the resources to pay for her to take an Uber to get to school, because otherwise she would have never have gotten there. She had a wonderful para too who helped her, but often the administration would try to co-opt the para for their own purposes so that the para could do some work for them. Another thing is just also about reading and writing, that if those things could actually be addressed, and this is one thing I just wanted to point out by the IEP, is that they make these really nice IEPs with all these goals, but there are no set concrete criteria to how to achieve them. They have these nice goals and say, this kid will be able to do this in the end of the year, but when he comes to a session, they don't have anything planned. There's nothing. And one woman said to me, well, I asked your son if he needed help, and he said no, so we didn't have our session. I said, he's a 13-year-old kid. Who's the adult here? No kid is going to tell you, yes, I can't read, or no, I can't make a sentence. It's obviously, it's beyond, it's beyond all our comprehensions, and the system really needs to be fixed. And on top of the fact, so much money could be saved. So much money could be saved if you actually hit kids in the beginning parts of childhood. It took me, they would not, when we had problems in elementary school, they would not give him an IEP. I had to go up to the district office in Harlem to get him tested. When he got the accommodations, when he got the stuff, they didn't want to provide it. And a DOE representative called me up and said, I'm sorry, but whoever gave you those one-on-one sets, you can't have them. And I said, I'm sorry, it's a legal mandated document and you can't change it. So he's just going, these doctors are saying, and your employee said, this is what he needs. Because often what would happen would be that, and I hate to say it, I mean, a lot of the teachers are great, but the SETS teachers, they aren't really educated like in dyslexia and how to really provide services. My son said, I don't want to be pulled out anymore because the kids are standing on chairs and I'm not getting anything done. I'd rather just be back in the classroom. Can you just let me go back?
I have a quick, just very quickly, you had mentioned, I think you had mentioned also that there were portions of the IEP that were deleted. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Did you receive any notice from the school prior to,
No.
to the deletion of those?
No, and when I saw, and this happened, it was when we were in 9th grade, he's in 10th grade now, so we were in 9th grade, we sat down, they said that they don't provide these, and I said, well, you should be, it's mandated. Well, we don't provide remedial help. He can have sets, but we are not going to do these one-on-one sessions. And so I said, well, I disagree with that, and even if you can't provide it, it's going to stay on the IEP, because, I don't think it's legal for you to take it off when he needs these services.
It's violation of federal law.
Well, they did. They did, because then it came back, and I said to the school psychologist, I had a meeting with him the junior year, a meeting with him. We sat down. I went over test scores of my son, stuff that teachers needed to be talked to, etc. I get the IEP. I see that none of that's been in there. I've been in a meeting with him for an hour and a half. None of it got changed. I don't know what he did. But then I saw that the services were off, and I asked him. And I emailed him, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, that's not my responsibility. That happened in 9th grade. And I said, no, it didn't. I mean, I had an advocate with me. My husband was with me. I have documentation, and we did not agree to get rid of any services. And he's like, well, that's what happened. It's not, I don't know. That's not my responsibility. And I don't know whose responsibility it is anymore.
We're trying to figure that out too.
I mean, you ask the principals, you ask the IEP coordinators, everybody just passes the buck.
And that's exactly how the system is designed, to pass the buck. And this is infuriating. It's infuriating, and you're the parent, and we feel for you, because this is just outrageous.
Well, I'm supporting my son a lot.
Right.
I'm doing a lot of tutoring at home. I'm learning a lot of things I never knew to support him. And I can only imagine, because my kids are at pretty good schools, LaGuardia and Beacon, and it makes me cringe when I think about other kids in lower income schools and what they must be going through, because it's just unimaginable. And I can pretty well navigate and fight. And I can't imagine what people, if they don't understand what their laws are and what their rights are, can do. And even I have trouble. Because, after a while, you're spending a lot of money on bus transportation and tutoring and this and that and the other, and you're putting yourself in debt. But like the other woman said, it's your kids, and there is no time. Either you're going to have a kid who's going to be educated and be able to go off to college, or you're not. And which one do you want? And so often these kids, when they're in these situations, they start feeling so much less than, that they just feel like, I can't do this. I can't be in school, I'm not a good student. And it's like, no, you just haven't had the instruction to help you. And it's unimaginable that these educators are allowing it, with school psychologists and IEP coordinators, are allowing kids to feel this way, because I don't know, their hands are tied, they don't have the resources. I don't know what it is, but it is all, they're all intermeshed. They all know what they're doing.
I'll share with you this, and then we'll close, because it's been a very powerful, long day. We don't have enough, and they are swamped. I'm not defending the actions of what might have happened here, because this is outrageous and it's illegal, but from my understanding of our system, we have over 1.1 million students, over 220,000 students with IEPs. Only about, today they said 800 school psychologists. That's the first number. That's the first time I've heard that number. Our numbers show less. We have about 1,200 or so full-time social workers in our school system, and about close to 3,000 or so guidance counselors. We don't have enough social supports in our system to meet the needs of all of our kids, and those who we do have are tied to mandated cases with IEPs, and they complain to us, and we hear from them that their caseloads are in the hundreds and sometimes over 1,000 kids. And we need more support staff to better meet the needs of our children. And so first of all, I applaud you. I applaud all the parents here for being the champions for your kids, but it is outrageous that you're doing this alone. There's no one that could help you navigate this process and deal with the bureaucracy on your behalf for your children. And it's evident to me that we have a lot more work to do for our children here. So I thank you all for your courage and for your advocacy. Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, absolutely. There's more work to do, but for now, this hearing is adjourned.